Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 5th, 2016 meeting of the Revere Ways and Means Committee, Subcommittee. We're here tonight to discuss additional appropriations requested by the Mayor's Office. Members of the committee are Bob Haas, Steve Morabito, Charles Patch, George Rotundo, and myself. Donnie, excuse me, Laurie. You're here tonight to discuss these appropriations? Yes. Okay, we want to come up to the podium, please? Yeah. The first one is in the amount of $95,756, and this is for the insurance account. This was money that I guess was not included for the city yard building and the...
Right, this is something that happens each year. So each year when we're doing the budget, we do the best job that we can to estimate what the insurance costs are going to be. And we request from the insurance agent at the time to provide us with the best estimate they can. At the time we prepared the budget, we estimated the number, and as you can see, it's much higher than what they anticipated it was going to be. Part of it is because we also had to add an additional rider. I forget the exact amount, it was around $26,000, I think, to add the DPW on a separate policy because of the deplorable condition it's in. They wouldn't accept it under the other policy that we had, so we had to add something on top of that. And then the general cost of the insurance going up.
So what you're saying, I guess, is the condition of that building is requiring extra premiums on the insurance?
Yeah. Yes, this year it did.
Thank you. Any councilors? Councillor Haas? Councillor Morabito? Councillor Patch? Councillor Rotundo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to both Donnie and Laurie, and this isn't directed at you per se. One of my biggest problems about doing this is not part and parcel of giving the money. The issue is dealing with the DPW facility itself. We have people down there that have specific illnesses, and we need to do something in order to get them a building as soon as possible. Donnie, do you know where we are on that at this point?
Yes, Councillor. Just today, it's funny. We have a feasibility study itself for design and program. We actually had several engineering firms on the site today surveying the property, going over the property, and I would say by late winter, early spring, we should have something back on the direction they're going to move us forward in.
Is it possible in the meantime, in order for us to get some type of temporary housing for them down there? I mean, you have one gentleman who gracefully survived cancer and is now got a mask over his face, and that entire area, after reading the report that Nick Catton also provided, in particular regarding fungus and other particulate matter, is very dangerous for someone like that, or very dangerous for someone who's also on immunosuppressive medications for arthritis or a host of other illnesses. So, as you point to yourself. So, I mean, I have no problem, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, to dedicating money to providing you right now with trailers. This is something that any construction company does with a phone call. It's simple. We should be doing this, and I don't care what the cost is at this point. It's not going to be exorbitant until you figure out what you're going to do with that building. But in the meantime, you guys need a place to stay that's safe. That's not a safe environment by what I've read, and that presents a major problem for me. Thank you.
Don?
Well, my response to that, Councilor, is I have had discussions with the mayor about this, and he actually was one of pushing us to put some trailers on the site. But part of this feasibility study is that if we locate these trailers where we anticipate locating them, in the event that they tell us that the facility has to be demolished, then where we're going to put the trailers, because you need to hook them up into the power, we need to have our fiber optics, our computer lines, our storage, and everything has to be tied into these. So I think we'll have that answer within the next couple of months. We could have off-site alternatives if that's the
As
case.
far as the
that's-
IT, I mean, not to
Yeah.
interrupt you, and I apologize, but as far as the IT stuff, that's all wireless. You don't need to do fiber optics, you don't need to hardwire them. The only thing that you would need is probably the electrical, if that, and,
Water, sewer, drainage.
well, I mean, you can
we-
still use the same water and sewer that you got in the building. I mean, a temporary
No, we
use of a
can't,
toilet.
George. It's where they want to locate the trailers, and they're two large trailers that they wanted to put there. Just talking with some of the engineers that came by, they say where the site is so small, too, it's a very small site, that they anticipate if the building has to be demoed.
So it's that
and
cumbersome.
It is. It
So
is.
what about something off-site then? in
Well,
order-
that's the other alternative. So I think within the next couple of months, we'll have that answer, because obviously if the building has to be demolished, then we're looking for alternative building sites within the city that we've been discussing in-house. And then we can stay and house the equipment, get the people out of there, and then build and
Very
move
well.
back and forth. So there is something in place. Obviously, it's not quick enough, but I've been dealing with this for 17 years now, and it's finally, looks like it's starting to go somewhere.
Understood, understood.
Okay? Thank
And,
you.
Yeah, this
Mr.
is just-
Chairman, thank you for the latitude.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This isn't something that happened overnight.
No,
No, this has been going on and on and on and on.
John, I've been there 17 years.
Through no
The-
fault of yours.
No, I get it. The building was condemned,
yeah.
the first year I took the building over. So it's just a matter of, putting things in its proper perspective. Now, there's been a lot of things in the community that need to, schools had problems, fire stations had problems, police stations had problems. So we've been building school, building new police and fire stations. So now, at this point in time, I think it's,
Yeah, I think it's, we've had an
it's
increase
long
in
overdue.
population in the past
Right.
10 years of over 9,000
But,
people coming into the city.
obviously, young children and students come first, and then, you're on the pecking order. So we're at that point where we're at the point of no return, actually. The building is beyond repair, in my estimation.
Thank you, Donnie. Any other councils want to speak on this? Questions? Okay, let's take the next item is $825, small amount of money. This is for a memorial for a former city councilor, late city councilor, Richard Penta. I don't believe anyone has any discussion on that. I certainly don't. I think it's something that is well-deserved. He's earned that during his tenure as a city councilor, and the quality of work that he performed for the residents of Ward 1. The next item is unanticipated Beachmont School electrical supply line work. Laurie, would you?
Sure, I think.
Either one.
The next board, Donnie, can probably give you more specifics on it.
Okay, that's fine.
So,
Fine,
Go ahead.
Okay. John, the first item, obviously, is the unanticipated cost for the Beachmont School. As Joanne, I know you're aware of, and other councils are aware of, they had a total loss of power in the system. They had a fire within the conduit line that runs from Bennington Street to the school. Well, that cost cannot be passed on to the school department because it's really not directly connected to the building, so the city has to incur that cost. The cost of replacing that is $25,000. It's already been done. The work has already been approved, but it'll leave us short in our building maintenance program for the rest of the community throughout the year if we don't replace that dollar amount.
Are there any councils that have any questions on that? On the other side, any councilors have any questions on that? Okay.
And this other one, unanticipated cost to upgrade heating in the boilers at the McKinley School. This, again, is one of those things where once they close the McKinley School, they just turn the building over to us. We need to maintain.
It's no longer a school
It's no
department
more a
building,
school department
correct.
building. They turned it over to the city, and the heat in the boilers are in really tough shape. And in order to keep them up and running, there's a lot of stock and supplies and things in there. They're using, it for certain other events and things of that nature, we won't be able to keep that building up and running unless we do these repairs. There's patches all over it, you know, I did this work in the past myself, and I went in there, and there's patches all over the boilers, patches all over the piping, and where that building is not occupied day to day, you don't want to go in there and find there's a problem, and the damage that could be caused by water pouring all throughout the building and freezing with no heat. So I think that's something that obviously needs to be done right away, and we didn't anticipate this work having to be done until we got access to the building.
Any councilors have any questions on that? Council?
Thank you. Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Goodwin, in regards to the McKinley School, is the city receiving any funding for some of the use that's happening over there that could help subsidize any of these incurred costs or maintenance costs?
I'm not aware if there is any.
Okay.
Council, that's.
Thank you.
Donnie, didn't we, some time ago, authorize a bond for several $1 million for that building?
What the plans are.
I'm not quite sure, John. I know there was some money that was, there's some plan that I'm not privy to all the specifications and things about it. So it would be unfair for me to answer questions that I don't know all the principles.
The next item is street lighting budget. Councilor Patch, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the McKinley School, it's been left vacant, of course, right? Has there been any vandalism or any?
No, not really. I'll be quite frank with you, there really hasn't been. We haven't seen any, you know, I don't want to mention stuff on TV, give kids an idea what to do. But there's been a lot of activity with the police department in there. They're running, you know, different programs and things of that nature. You know, we're anticipating, you know, whatever happens with this building, that we may need some swing space, and that would obviously be, you know, a perfect location. I know the mayor and his staff have some ideas of what they would like to do with the building. So we have to maintain the heat in the building to make sure that it stays up. That could be a relocation site for us as well, temporarily for our offices. If,
The DPW,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just hope that the, you know, the mayor turns it over quickly, because as we know, from these vacant houses that we have in our wards, they get destroyed awful easy.
We generally go in and out of the building so that, you know, we would know if somebody's in the building. And, you know, for people's edification, obviously, the police department's in there once or twice a week with the canine dogs doing particular different exercises and things. So if there are people that are living and try to be living in that building, they would see what's going on, and the dogs would surely sniff them out, and there wouldn't be an issue with that. But we haven't had any problems to date.
Good, good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Donnie, the original plan was to have the school department move into the facility, right? Do you know if that's still a plan?
I don't know that. That's up to the superintendent of public schools and the mayor's office. I know at one time that was the thought.
The original plan, right?
Yeah, and, but I don't know where, if there was any funding developed for that, or there was any anticipation of, you know, moving in there, what that time frame would be. I'm not privy to that information.
Because if it's not going to be used, it should be used as an office complex, you know, for small businesses. As the high school, the original high school, should have been used before the fire, without question.
Well, I think that has been part of the discussion in talking with the mayor, using it to generate revenue for the city.
Right.
And then there's other issues that came up about, you know, we don't know what the total end cost is going to be since the tornado to handle this building, and if it requires us to have swing space. So you're kind of in flux that we find out really what needs to happen here with this building. And because if there is a need for swing space, then obviously that would be the perfect location, the proximity to City Hall, to be able to do that.
Right.
Why
I don't know if
why
would-
they do the renovations of City Hall.
I don't know if they would utilize the whole building, because that's a large building there. Maybe a wing of it or something, a floor. We should look at using it also for small business people.
Well, I think that is the main thought that the administration is thinking about, because they were talking, you know, to me about it, and obviously they see it as an opportunity to raise money
Bring revenue
on
into the
behalf
city.
and create revenue for the city.
Thank you.
Councillor Rotundo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, after looking at an old note regarding this, Councilor Haas, you're absolutely right. It was supposed to be a mix of both inspectional services, your department, Donnie, at the department head level, as well as the department heads over from the high school. But to add to the conversation regarding bringing your department over there, that would be a perfect fix in a temporary stay. You have all the electronics and hardwired stuff in there, so all you would be doing is just bringing everybody over and plugging it in as you're gesturing over there. So if we could send a letter to the mayor requesting that take place in the interim, in order to protect the workers down at the DPW yard, if you have no disapprovals, Mr. Chairman, could we get that done?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Councillor Guinasso.
We don't have to look too far to see the creativity that's occurring in Lynn. They use City Hall for their venue for many concerts, and to this point in time, it's been a very productive and effective way to raise funds for the community. And everybody that I speak with on it says that it's a great idea. They have a lot of fun. In the same token, the town of Lynn, city of Lynn, raises a lot of revenue, and it helps with their tax base. So creativity in government is now what's necessary, and I think that anything we can do to help in that manner in brainstorming some ideas with the administration, namely the mayor, to assist in trying to do some of these things beneficial to our community. But I think that the site to be temporarily used for the DPW would be a great idea because of business use. We can hook up phones within minutes, and it's a very productive place for our city to work, and for the people who work for the DPW, for better housing. We have to spend the money anyway to put the heating system in, so let's take use of it.
We also have a parking lot right next to it also.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Might work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Anzoni, I have a question, and I just mentioned it a few minutes ago. I seem to remember the school department coming up here several years ago, looking for a bond authorization in excess of $2 million, and I can remember that the debt service on that was going to be close to $2 million. Was that?
Yeah, what they did is we had a loan order passed for $2.5 million for the McKinley School, and the debt service was going to be paid on Schedule 19 by the school department.
Yeah.
And that's if they moved into that building.
But that never.
That never occurred, so
Okay.
we haven't authorized, it's been authorized, but we haven't borrowed anything on that yet.
Okay, I knew we did
Yeah,
something back
right, we
then.
did.
It just, okay, thank you. All right. All right, the next item would be the $100,000 appropriation for street lighting. Donald?
That is essentially when the budget was prepared, there was an underestimation of what the actual street lighting costs were going to be. It was basically level funded, but per our review and our analysis of what the current costs are and what we've been paying, we determined that we're going to need this additional $100,000 before the end of the year. So that's why this is on the list.
Question, are we under contract now for street lighting for a certain amount of money per kilowatt hour?
It's my understanding that the street lighting is at market rate, is that correct? Right, currently. And we did have someone come in recently to pull some invoices to look to see if that was still the better option, because for a number of years, we had locked ourselves in for 3 years or so, and more recently, the market has been such that it made more sense to go month to month versus locking in permanently.
Right. What we did do is we signed a recent electrical contract from a provider, so that we went out and had a search done on who's the lowest provider, and we signed a contract on that. As far as the street lighting, there's another option with street lighting. is cities and towns actually take possession of their street lighting and replace the street lights with a contract, usually with, I believe it's National Grid, with LED lighting. And with that, there's a cost savings because you, instead of having the high bulbs that they have now, they have the LED lighting, and there is a cost savings to that. But it also means you'd also have to contract any maintenance as far as the streetlights are concerned, especially if somebody hits them and knocks them over. So those are the things we have been looking at, and there's a number of things that we're looking at and we'll be looking at in the future.
No, I know that snow removal, we're allowed to run a deficit in that account. Are we allowed to run a deficit in street lighting?
No?
No.
No.
Okay,
Bonded debt, principal,
yeah.
and judgments, and executions, and snow removal.
Okay, any councilors? Councilor Rotundo.
Through you to Director Goodwin. On the side, what is the cost to pave a street the size of, say, Page Street?
Well, it varies, George. Obviously, you got to go in there and do a complete survey. We usually do that through Mike Kessman, he's our estimator through community development.
So we recently did Barrett Street. What would that cost?
That was done, not through my department, that was done through community development.
My understanding is like $40,000.
That sounds reasonable, but I can get you actual numbers and provide them to you. I do have access to them, I can get them to you.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to vote on anything until those paper streets are done down in Ward 1. So that's my comment right now. I thank you for your presentation.
Any other councilors? Okay, the next item on here is $25,000. This is due to unanticipated additional tree removal.
Yep. Well, currently, what you see available budget is $12,000. It's nowhere close to that. We've actually exhausted this account. This is one of those things that, you know, obviously all your councils are aware. You could probably never spend enough money on tree removal and tree, but with the amount of requests that is being received in the mayor's office and myself and Paula Genza going out looking at these trees, we do have some critical, dangerous situations that need to be, you know, looked at before the real bad weather gets here. So we would need that additional funding to get our tree contractor to come in and go after some of these more dangerous trees that are out there.
We've got one in particular down on Eustace Street, Mr. Gioso's property.
His tree is gone, Mr.
No, but the stump has to be ground down.
The stump has been ground down,
Okay.
we just need to replace the sidewalk now.
Okay, good enough.
So what happens is, you know, you get the tree's gotta come down, then the stump's gotta get grinded, then the sidewalk's gotta get torn up. So when you look at, you know, $3,000
Costs
to
money.
take a tree down, it's a lot more than just
And
taking
I
a
know
tree
down
down.
in
for
Oak
three.
Island, we just did the park down there. We're going to be removing some of those branches, I understand, to
Yes.
give them more visibility into the park for the
Correct.
lighting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Okay, what else we have here? The special election that was held, looking for a $60,000 appropriation.
Yeah, again, this is, usually elections are running around $60,000. It's sort of an estimate at this point. We're waiting for some additional invoicing and that type of thing to come in. So when we submitted that to you, that's what we estimated it to be.
Well, there's no way you could have anticipated that back
No,
in June.
No, I'm sorry.
Right,
No,
okay.
there's no way we would have been able to know that this was going to come down the line.
Any councilors? Okay, take the next item is,
The solicitor's office. So that, there are a couple of unanticipated expenses related to the Recycle Rewards vendor. That was something that had been set up and established a long time ago, and during the last administration, there was a decision made to terminate that contract. But they are fighting with us, saying that they want, that we're still, should be contracted. I don't know a lot of the specifics because I wasn't directly involved with this, but I do know that this is something where they have been trying to get the case it's odd, it's an odd situation in that because their main office is located in New York, it's a New York-based case, and they were trying to get that moved to Boston, which they thought that was going to be successful. And if they do that, then they're hoping that, you know, things will be a little bit better. But this number is based on what we think it would be if it comes to Boston.
That's a 20,
Well, the 25, it's for that case, and then there were also some outside legal fees for slots, in which we couldn't anticipate at that point in
Exactly.
time of setting the budget. So between the two of them, we're anticipating that it'll be about $25,000 more than what we originally anticipated.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Any councilors? Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you. So in total, the cost for both outside counsel and litigation for the recycle points? One more time?
I don't know the specific, I don't know
No,
the
no,
exact breakdown.
what is it that we're looking to pay for at this point?
Well, this is for the legal costs associated with possibly trying that case and having
and my
to go
question is-
back and forth to New York, like the costs associated with that
Right, so what
particular
we're
case.
gonna do in federal district court down there versus if they're gonna put it up here.
Right.
So my question is what is that cost right there alone right now? Where does it stand?
I haven't seen any invoices yet for that. I just went over the numbers because I was aware of it and tried to estimate what those figures are. Again, it's an estimate. We don't know for sure what that number is going to be, but because we were setting the tax rate and
Right.
you know.
Could we find out what the dollar amount is on the recycle points? I mean, I do know they're significant depending on where they're going, but, you know, the question is the value there? And I'm sure there is, but I would like to know what I'm fighting for.
Okay, so you're looking, I'm sorry.
I'm looking
you're
for
looking
the,
for what information?
The details of the case.
So, but when you say recycle points, you want to know what about the recycle points?
My understanding is you said that we have an issue with recycle.
Oh, all right.
So
you just
I
want
want
to
to find
know
out what
all
the,
right,
yes,
okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
And what is the return on the case? So obviously, if we're spending $100,000 for it, I would hope that the return on the recycle points for that case is a lot higher than what we're going to be spending.
Well, the cost associated and what the benefit, the cost and benefit analysis of that.
Yeah, exactly. So
Sure.
they would know that. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Councilor, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Councilor Rotundo. I don't have all the information. I remember, just for some discussion, I remember hearing that, in essence, and this isn't factual, it's from what my understanding is Recycle Bank was not taking the trash. They were not picking it up. So in essence, they had to cancel the contract, and they went on with the vendor that they use now to pick up the recycling.
So my understanding, through you, Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that contract was originally through Easy Disposal, if I'm not mistaken. They were the ones that were actually picking it up. In fact, they had outfitted their trucks in order to pick up the recycle bank. I was one of the people that worked with Tom to bring it here to Revere because we were trialing it in Ward 4. So my concern is if that's what you're telling me, that they're not picking it up, that would mean that there's a disconnect between Easy Disposal, our disposal agent, and actually the company itself that's remunerating us for the recyclables. So, and that comes down to tipping fees. So we're gonna need a whole lot of information, Laurie.
Yep.
All right, well, all right.
Okay, does everyone have a copy of the additional communication here?
On the additional appropriations?
Yeah.
I believe so. Ashley, if everyone doesn't, we can get you a copy. Does everyone have it? Yeah, all right, yeah, I thought so.
This is for a transfer of $1 million from the stabilization account. This has to do with the regional call center. Questions? George?
Let me just get my other folder.
What we're looking for here is we're asking for $1 million to be transferred from the stabilization fund because we need to balance the budget. As you know, we have a levy limit. And we are doing two things. One is the rec center, the regional call center, Metropolitan North Regional Emergency Communication Center, quite a name, went online in November 1st, and we are now dispatching calls from that center with Winthrop. Right now, it is online. So we have to share the cost with Winthrop. They passed the budget of $2,317,000, and the City of Revere is paying, I think, a 73, don't quote me on this, but I think it's a 73 to a 76% amount. There's a formula for that that goes by 1, population, and 2, by the number of calls. That formula was worked out. You have a copy of that in your packet on that formula. And if I want to get my paper, excuse me a minute. I don't know why I left them in my seat, but go ahead. Thank you, Laurie. If you look at the budget, that budget is based on that $2,317,000, $382.74. That was for a full year. But we took it for 8 months and then broke down the number of calls, broke down the population, and the City of Revere's total portion of the budget would be $549,567, and Winthrop would have their portion of the budget. So with that, we would need, so the total contribution of each would be, in fiscal year 17, would be Winthrop's share of, at the bottom, $249,929.74, and Revere's would be $803,959.09. However, the City of Revere contributed already payrolls in the amount of $81,999, and we're deducting that from the amount already that from that $803,000, plus we already have $150,000 that's left over from the budget that we have in 2017, and thus we are now looking for the $540,000, which will give us enough sufficient funds in order to fully pay our contribution on this rec center.
Fiscal year, the end of the fiscal year.
For the end of the fiscal year, for this year. Next year will be a portion, whatever the budget passes, but it'll be a portion somewhere in the area of the $2,317,000.
And that'd be predicated also on the amount of calls?
It gets predicated on the amount of calls, gets predicated, 50% of the formula is on the number of calls, and then 50% of the formula, according to the agreement, is on the population. So we had to do a search of the population, we had to get the number of calls. Every quarter there's going to be a reconciliation on the number of calls, and we're going to adjust the billing at that point, but we don't feel that's going to change that much.
So unlike Winthrop, our population increases, the calls would increase also, presumably.
They would, and we would pay a larger portion if that were the case. However, we made certain that we took before we brought this budget together, we made certain that we went over the latest population figures and the latest call figures. And these call figures that we have were for the past year, and that's we have to, it's the previous year's calls. So that's what they based their budget on, so that's what we based these calls on. So that's what they were doing next year. However, we had to get it from our records. Next year, the calls become right from the call center. So right from the rec center, MNRECC, they will be giving us the amount of calls, and they will have a a better handle on the amount of calls that the city review will be receiving, and the city of Winthrop will be receiving. So they will take that into the formula. The population change is probably quicker in City of Revere at a faster rate than Winthrop because we have more space and more apartments coming in. So our portion will be going up. But if you look at on the calls alone, we're paying 77.66%, and they're paying 22.34%. On the population, we're paying 74.91%, and they're paying 25.9%. So based on that and bring them together, that's what the City of Revere is paying, and that's what the town of Winthrop is paying. And that's why we asked for this amount. The other amount for the $500,000 transfer that we're asking for to set up the contract negotiation account. As you're aware, the city contracts, none have been signed on the city side. Police, fire, DPW, and City Hall. And so that there's not a deficit or this, we're coming back to you at the in the middle of the year saying we need X amount of dollars. We're trying to be proactive with this and saying we need this amount of money, an estimated amount of money, in order to fund any type of contracts that will be signed. So we're asking for the first two votes here. One is we need a vote for a further appropriation for $500,000 to the contract negotiation account, and we're asking for another transfer for $540,000 for the rec account, to the rec account. And then we're asking for a appropriation from the stabilization account to balance the budget. So there's three different votes. So if we could have the transfers, which is two different votes, and then those are two appropriations, then a transfer from the stabilization to to balance the budget. And then we'll be under our, which is necessary in order, because tonight you're being asked to set the minimum residential factor of 1.75 so we can set our tax rate.
Yeah, so basically, the more apartments we have coming into the city, the greater chance that we're going to have to make a larger contribution to that.
The more calls you get, the higher your population goes, the more likely, the higher our population grows faster than Winthrop, is more likely that we'll be making a contribution.
That's
correct.
scary. That's very scary.
Well,
Any councilors? Councilor Haas.
Councilor.
What's the stabilization current balance?
I believe the stabilization current balance is, you have that in the transfer, I believe it's 5.1 million,
5.766?
76, that could be it, yes.
That's the current balance, correct?
Yes, yes, current balance, 766,592.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to George. My understanding is we haven't certified free cash yet. I spoke to you some time ago, as well as looking at basically the documents that we have been submitted, the end of the month treasury information that's submitted to us every month. Why are we using the money from the rainy day fund instead of certifying free cash and deriving money there? I mean, clearly we have money in other accounts. Why are we doing this? And I don't see the reason to do this if, we haven't certified free cash. We should be doing that.
Well, the city auditor is presently working with the Department of Revenue in order to certify both fiscal year 15 free cash and fiscal year 16 free cash. That should be done within the next couple of weeks. We should have those certified. The city should receive that amount of money. But what happens with the free cash when we do receive it is that what remains unused is we transfer, normally what the procedure has been, we transfer the free cash into the stabilization fund, so pretty much like backfill it. So it's something that I have just explained that to the financial markets Friday, because they
look downward on
it was
this.
one of their questions that they had, and I said, well, what will happen is, and just by the way free cash works, is that, in the way our policy is that once we do get free cash, is we will have it transferred. If we don't use it during the year, so we don't lose it, we will transfer it into the stabilization funds.
That said, my other question is, as far as the negotiation for the contracts. I mean, I've spoken to pretty much every head of the unions that are negotiating with the city at this point. I don't believe any of them have actually reached any conclusion at this point, in particular the DPW and police I've spoken to recently. I haven't spoken to fire lately, or at all, to be quite honest. My biggest concern is this solely just to cover the increases for the year, or is it part and parcel of litigation cost inclusive of these increases?
What this is intended to cover is any retro that we may have, retroactive pay raise that we may have, and also to any increases we may have during this fiscal year. So that's what we're looking at, the $500,000.
So that's a pretty significant increase, remembering.
It may be less, and it may be more.
Well, I mean, if they go 5%, it's going to be a lot more. If they do 2%, that's a little bit, it's a little excessive.
Right. So it's where they land. So we're trying to figure out where they're landing. The mayor wants to be very proactive about this. He doesn't want to have to come back and say to the council, problem is, if you come back in the middle of the year and say, I need this money, we want to show it on this recap sheet that we're using the money this way, which is beneficial. That way there we don't have something lingering and saying, well, we have this $500,000, well, we'll show you that on the next year's recap. We're saying, we're going to show it to you on this year's recap, and it's upfront, and it's there, and it's in reserve. So we don't have, so the administration doesn't have to come back up to the city council and say, listen, we need X amount of dollars for the raises, and we didn't do any planning for it. So that's why they're looking at it now, to do it now.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Patch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, most of my questions you just answered, Councilor Rotundo. As far as the $500,000 for the contract negotiations, I would just like to, I don't understand why we have to do it, you just come out of the clear blue and say 500,000 when we don't know, you know, I've also had conversation with all the union heads.
Right.
And I believe the DPW was close, but I think there's a problem now. The police are not even close. The fire, as far as last conversation I had, they were close. But I'd like to, you know, I would kind of like this, see this kind of broken down. How much?
Well, you can't do that, and I'll tell you why.
Well, I mean,
yeah, you know, because part of it's.
How much is going to the legal fees compared to the?
None of this is going to legal fees. None of this is going to
This is-
legal.
none of this is going to legal fees?
No, none of this is going to legal fees. This is for contract negotiations. This isn't for legal fees. This is for any type of raises. Whatever the contract is giving to the union members, this is what this is going for.
Okay, but how, I
But
mean,
we did an estimate, and you have to do a range of estimates. So if they settle at 1%, you gotta figure what that is going, the likelihood of that. Then you have to figure if they're gonna say it's 2%. And then you say to yourself, as George said, 5%, and it's unlikely it's gonna be 5%. So
Right,
I don't wanna make any statement up here.
Well, that's
But
why
all
I-
I'm saying is we had to make a decision had to be made. How much likelihood is it that a 5%, that this 500,000 would cover it? And that's what would happen. We actually looked at that.
I mean,
so we
I
can do it.
understand that.
And I'm not involved in negotiations, so
I've negotiated
Right.
with 3 different administrations, I mean, for the police.
Right.
And, you know, I just, the numbers just, it seems like everybody, you know, it always starts off, you know, the city wants 0 and the unions want 10%. You know,
I've heard that in
and
negotiations.
hopefully you can get somewhere close to the middle.
Well, I guess somewhere in the middle, depends.
But I just, I don't understand, you know, all right, we're gonna give you 500,000. But you have,
No,
they don't have any idea
No, what
how
we're
much
saying.
money
Right.
is gonna be, at the end, this is how much you're gonna need.
Right. Well, what we're saying is, our best estimation is this is what you'll need. If we don't use it, we'll take it and we'll put it back in the stabilization fund, as we have in the past. It has been done in the past. Because if it's not used for this, it's only gonna be used, if you transfer into that account, only gonna be used for that one purpose. So if it's not used for this, and in the event it isn't, it will be used to transfer it back into the stabilization fund, more than likely. If more is needed, we could be coming back up here and saying we need more out of the stabilization fund and, to be transferred out. And, you know, hopefully our estimate is good. Hopefully the estimate is good. We
Right.
think it is. And I think it's a reasonable estimate, for covering the, raises. And I believe that, it will handle, it should handle most of what, is being looked at by the unions. I'm not privy to what all the unions are looking for, but, I do think on the estimations that I hear, that this is a good figure.
All right, unfortunately, I got one more on the other, 540,000.
Counselor, I don't mean to be abrupt, but we have a meeting at.
Well, it's a lot of money.
6 o'clock. I understand that,
Yeah, but we don't set that budget. We don't set that budget.
And as far as the call taking, you know, I'm very familiar with
I know,
both the old and the new.
right.
And the old seemed to be worked very well and seemed to be a lot cheaper than what the new is. I understand that originally it was supposed to be Chelsea Revere in Winthrop,
That's correct.
and that would have been a lot cheaper for Revere, but
It would have
they
been,
bailed out.
right.
So now, and Winthrop is not going to be very helpful with us on this, so I think,
I
I
know
think
they're
Revere
right.
would be better much on the old system than what's going on right now. That's my opinion.
Okay, but I do think the police department and fire department are reaching out to other communities to become part of it, because the more people you get into it, the economy of scale come into play, where we'd be paying less money, and we'd be taking advantage of the economies of scale. But that's something they're looking into.
Well, you know, and I hope down the line they look into really, is it worth our while to continue with this system, because it's going to get very costly.
But
And if you remember, George, it wasn't, the old system worked very well with just temporary call takers and just for the city, no benefits, no, I know they're going to, this is for raises, salary.
This is for, not raises, this is for salary, lots of salary, then there's budgeted items that they need, maintenance of hardware, purchases of hardware and software, purchase for equipment, purchase for training, there's a number of issues that they're purchasing.
You know, I just, you know.
And it's just much more coverage, and the other part of it too, because I've actually.
It's not more coverage, it's the same coverage.
No, it's not, and I'll tell you why,
Well,
because.
it is, it's the
I'll tell you
same
why, because-
911 calls, it's the regular calls.
Well, it
It's
is,
the,
in a way, but
the
it's.
same calls that we got before we had this system.
Right. Some can see that, but the other part of it too, is I can just say this, is that, you know, you have to watch your liability, especially in call centers, and there's particularly one piece of software that was purchased, which was called PowerPhone, and which gives you the protocols, and if you follow those protocols, which are gonna be on the computer now, they were originally on a flash card, but now they're gonna be in the computer. If you follow those protocols, when somebody tells you an incident, what's happening, you're less likely, your liability is going to be a lot less. So that once you bring that liability down, there's a great cost savings. So you don't have a circumstance where a mistake is made, or a fire equipment is sent to a police call, or a police call is sent to a police car is sent to a fire call, and say a house is burnt down, which has happened in the city of Revere.
Well, it's still happening with this,
But
you know.
hopefully this doesn't happen again. So that's what they're looking at. And then again, because I have been involved in this since the inception of it, and I think that it is a good thing, and you have much more experience in the police department than I'll ever have. But I think it's a good thing, and it's something that E911 wants to have happen in the state, and they're looking for other communities to get involved. And I think once we break through the, I don't want to say the glass ceiling, because that refers to something else, but once we break through that glass wall, I guess, and get another community involved with us, say a Chelsea or a Saugus or Everett or somewhere else, then it becomes much more cost efficient. And if that happens, then we could get, and once we get to a certain point, the state will actually, they have come up in the past with brick and mortar that actually give you a building, and actually it will fund the building in order to put enough communities into the rec center. So,
Well, that's wishful thinking, George, because that ain't gonna happen. I mean, Chelsea, that's why Chelsea dropped out. They had a union over there, call takers, that were making almost as much money as the police officers.
well,
And,
that's not why Chelsea
and-
dropped out. I was in on that discussion. That's not why they dropped out.
Gentlemen, with all due respect, the time
I hate
is
to disagree with
moving
you,
on.
Counselor. I'll tell you why they dropped out.
Councilor
Thank you.
Keefe, and then
Thank you,
Councilor
George.
Zambuto, and then we're going to take a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I basically had the same concerns as Councilor Patch. And in essence, I recognize that this could be a very good benefit to the city, but from what I've seen so far, this new call center hasn't really panned out as far as from a financial standpoint. And I'm not aware of many issues that we had as a city prior. But if we did, and obviously one life would be one life or one incident would be a lot more valuable than $540,000. However,
And that's just the point of it.
Correct. So I wouldn't advocate against it, but if we continue going down this road and in a year from now, other communities aren't willing to join on, there's probably a reason that I would think that we would have to just revisit it to see what we could do internally to.
Well, I think it's always going to be revisited, and it should always be revisited, see the effectiveness of it, and I think that will happen. I think other communities will be getting onto it, because I think E911, which is the state organization, is pushing cities and towns to go this way, because it's economies of scale for the communities. They are funding it to a point. We don't know what other grants we're going to get. We got some grants this year. I think we're in the startup portion. It took us 5-6 years to start this up. This actually was started 2 administrations ago, went to another administration, now it's on a 3rd administration. So it's finally starting up. It's only been in place probably a month, since November 1st. Well, the combined, I think November 10th, I think was the start date of the combined. But what will happen is, you know, you look at there's a South Shore one that's working very successfully. You have to remember, these people are now trained and they're certified much differently than they were before, and they have EMD training. In order to sit at that desk, they have to have certain things, and these men and women that are sitting there, and I see the stress that they're going under, because I've watched them and talked to them a number of times, is that, and I'm not an expert in this stuff at all, but just my own impression as a layperson, I think that they do a great job, and I'm glad they're there in case I have an emergency. I'll be honest with you.
Thank you, Councilor Keefe. Councilor Zambuto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect to my dear friend and colleague from Ward 6, I totally disagree with him. I was on board with this from day one. This is professional call takers. This is a whole different ballgame. Nobody likes change. This is a startup situation here. It's not fully operational. It's not, let's say the gears are not completely greased yet. This is 100 times better than amateur, untrained, compared to the kind of training these people have, the certification, it's not even in the same ballpark. So this is going to be fine. A year, 2 years from now, we're all going to be saying what a wonderful system this is. So bear with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zambuto. I'm going to call for a vote on these appropriations. I just want to mention one thing also, that we are also getting personnel that normally would be manning those centers back into the positions that they were intended for. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Fire,
correct.
police, whatever the case may be.
Right, we are.
Okay.
We are.
And that's a good thing.
It is.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could we line item Councillor Penta's transfer altogether.
You want to take that separate?
Yeah.
And you're going to vote against the?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anzoni. Call the roll, please, on the appropriations, the additional appropriation.
Shall the city council appropriate, you wanted to take them all separately?
We'll take one for Councilor Penta first,
Okay.
and then we'll take everything else in a bundle.
Okay. Shall the city council appropriate $825 to the, one of the clerk accounts for the purpose of former city councilor Richard Penta's memorial? Councillor Haas? Yes. Councillor Morabito? Yes. Councillor Patch? Yes. Yes. Councillor Rotundo? Yes, and Chairman Powers.
Yes.
Yes, that line item has been approved.
Okay, now we'll take everything else as a bundle.
Shall the city council appropriate additional appropriations for the FY17 budget as follows? $95,756.20 to the DPW, $25,000 to the DPW, $25,000 to the DPW, $100,000 to the DPW, $25,000 to the DPW, $60,000 to the election department, $4,500 to the health department, and $25,000 to the city solicitor. Councillor Haas? Yes. Yes. Councillor Morabito?
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Patch? Yes. Yes. Councillor Rotundo? No. No, and Chairman Powers?
Yes.
Yes, the appropriations have been approved, or will be favorably recommended to the full city council. Shall the city council approve a transfer in the amount of $100,000 from the Stabilization Fund? Councillor Haas? Yes. Yes. Councillor Morabito? Yes. Councillor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Powers? I'm sorry, Councillor Rotundo? No. No, and Chairman Powers?
Yes.
Yes, the transfer has been approved.
Madam Clerk, just a point of information, it's $1 million.
What is, I'm sorry, $1 million.
Can we split those two, please? The two items? On the.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To be clear, the previous vote was for, shall the city council approve a transfer in the amount of $1 million from the Stabilization Fund? On the second vote, shall the city council appropriate $500,000 to the reserve contract negotiations account? Councillor Haas? Yes. Yes. Councillor Morabito? Yes. Councillor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Rotundo? Yes. Yes, and Chairman Powers?
Yes.
Yes, that appropriation has been approved. And shall the city council appropriate $540,000 to the MNRECC account? Councillor Haas? Yes. Yes. Councillor Morabito? Yes. Councillor Patch?
No.
No. Councillor Rotundo? No. No, and Chairman Powers?
Yes.
Yes, that appropriation passes.
That will conclude the Ways and Means Committee subcommittee meeting for December 5th, 2016. These matters will be reported out before the full city council at our regular meeting this evening.